Hello, and welcome to this virtual roundtable discussion, where we'll be finding out how to create relationships that make customers want to come back again and again. This is one of a series of 3 videos on building a seamless multi-channel experience. The videos, sponsored by Airship, form the basis of an article in the Future CMO supplement published in the Sunday Times. I'm your host, Morag Cuddiford-Jones, and I'm delighted to be joined by 5 of the world's most influential leaders in the space. They are Steve Tan, VP and General Manager APAC EMEA Airship; Mantas Ratomskis, Head of CRM and Retention Kilo Health; Angela Byrne, Digital Banking and Transformation NatWest; Holly Ainger, CMO Nuffield Health; and Neil Kirby, Marketing and Consumer Director Bupa Global. I'm going to start by asking, what are the most effective ways of getting customers to interact with your brand regularly?
It's giving them a reason to interact, really. So for me, I'm really passionate about loyalty and retention. Yes, new customers are important, but once you have a customer, it's about how you can get them to engage with whatever your product is or your content is, so that they actually feel like they're valued. We lost a third of our whole member base in gyms across Nuffield Health during the pandemic, and we had to think of a way of making sure that those people that had stayed with us, were feeling valued and loyal. So, we created an online digital fitness platform, which meant they could work out from home or wherever they were. And I think, we as brands sometimes tend to forget about how important retention is. So really, it's looking at how you can reduce that churn rate and really think about the customers that matter. Not that every customer doesn't matter, but you have to make a balance on how can you generate the new customers, but also how can you look after your current ones. And we know that there's so many different loyalty platforms and schemes around. But for me, it's about making sure that those loyalty incentives that you put in matter to the customer. And again, it kind of links back to insights around what does that customer really want. And that's what our job is, to look at the future marketing trends and work with all of those customers to really understand how we can retain them and look after them.
It's really interesting that, I think acquisition is key, but a big part of the things that we talk about is if you spend a lot of money acquiring users, say, to download an application, but if you don't spend any money trying to retain those users, they're just going to go again, and it's so wasted. And so many people will continually invest in evolving their app features and trying to change the app, but they forget about messaging, and they forget about the need to build some sort of retention strategies in place for that.
Yeah, no, completely. And I think within insurance, in most insurances, we hope you don't use it. So with health insurance, you kind of thinking, a healthy customer is one who never has to claim. But I think from a product perspective, something we've done, focus particularly on high net worth, is include a number of things, whether it's physio or optical or dental, and actually have things that they can use, because we know our NPS is significantly higher if you've used the product, because you've seen value, you've actually experienced the product. It's very difficult for someone who's had a product for 5 years, never used it, which is great because it means you're healthy, but it's very difficult to recommend something you've never used, apart from the stories, whether it's testimonials, you can demonstrate that when you do really need us, we're there. So I don't think we should be ashamed of letting people use our products, even if it does cost us money, because to your point, retention is fundamental. It is really expensive, so why not look at it through a different optic and say, well, why wouldn't we let people use the product in a way that they saw value? That's a lot more effective marketing than acquisition from start.
As well, I think adding to that, it just aligns to sort of, particularly around the brand aspect, it aligns to the purpose of why we're here. And from a financial services perspective, the purpose, we're here to make obviously customers' financial lives better and help them when we can. So from our perspective, the key habit forming and I suppose interaction is around things working when they need to. So when you need to make that payment, that it works in the right way, in as seamless a way as possible, but also helping customers when they need our help. So whether that's access to finance, whether that's if a life event has happened, because they need support and so on and so forth, and they're having difficulty with their finances. If ever there was a great example of that over the last 18 months, we've got it in the pandemic, being there to support, and actually, knowing your customer throughout that has become even more important, I think. And that almost repeat usage and actually getting it right more times than you don't becomes even more critical to customers, and it's actually part of their expectations, I think.
Just I guess that interaction with customers, I think there's a difference between sending an email out and looking at click-through rates and open rates. And so we, for example, do midterm calls, so we actually get someone to pick up a phone and phone a customer. Now, it's always difficult to get hold of customers, but I do think that speaks to the brand a lot more than, we all know how many emails we have. Random emails, don't really read that much, but I think that outward, I think traditionally brands have been kind of scared of engaging with customers, bizarrely, because they're afraid of what they hear. But I think doing it at certain points of the customer journey is great for the brand, but also beneficial for customers.
I think the best strategy described was in Reforge session by Brian Balfour, when he simply named 4 pillars, which are in a form of a pyramid. It is product, notification, incentives, people. And each of these parts are closely related, because if you, for example, take out notifications, then it means that you have to give more incentives and you have a way higher load on your people. If you take out incentives and notifications, it basically means that your customer success department will go nuts. And if you don't have product, which can be relied on, it means that, so technically you don't have fundamental part of that pyramid. So I think these 4 parts are critical at the very beginning of new customers' life cycle, and especially in mobile applications market, in which I am, or the same digital health and wellness. We have to gain trust, and we have a very short amount of time from the very beginning to gain that trust. If customer doesn't get how that service is going to help him to achieve his goal during first hour, you're doomed. You spent loads of money to acquire the customer, you disappointed him, and most likely he will sort of translate that story and that bad experience for his inner circle.
It's funny, one of these things, it reminds me of gym memberships, has to be said. Making sure that you use it, and for me, the whole gym membership is, becoming an evangelist for the first couple of months, followed by guilt-ridden for a couple of months, followed by I'm just going to pretend it doesn't happen. I'll leave it. It'll roll over. It was the price of being an evangelist for 2 months. But it's working out how to deliver that value over a long time and change it, I guess, according to how the customer's behavior is changing. One of the interesting quotes that I heard was Terry Crews, the big actor from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. He's a bodybuilder and everything else. He says, if you want to get people to keep going to the gym, give them discounts off smoothies. Tell them just to go to the cafe. Because going to the gym bit's scary, but if they get used to going to the cafe, they might start going to the gym. So in terms yeah, Holly, sorry, I'm just sort of needling it on your space.
I think that engagement in what we would call our secondary services has become even more relevant. Our biggest challenge has been that, some of those haven't been open during the pandemic, but I think now it's about that value add piece of, yes, come and use our swim facilities, come and use our, retail, we've got retail in all of our sites. And I guess as well, thinking about that blending of remote working versus working from home, even that's changed. So our peak times in our gyms have changed, and remote working has changed that, loyalties have changed. So would a person who was previously with us maybe change to a more local gym? All of those things we've had to really think about, and then link it to the loyalty piece of how do we make them stay.
I can reveal you the best performing wellness sector retention strategy, especially what is related with gyms. Just call your customers and ask, are they going to visit gym next month? Most of them will tell that yes, and if you will ask them, are they going to sort of prolong or renew their subscription like right now, they will say yes, because they are afraid to tell that they aren't going to take care about their bodies, or they are lazy, or they don't have time, because you have to go to gym. It's a sort of a social convention. It's like, you know, like a hot beverage when people are sad or something like that.
Neil, you were nodding a little bit earlier about the whole value and people's behaviors changing and things like that.
Yeah, I think wellness in particular, I think we're seeing a shift away from health insurance, which ultimately is access to healthcare when something dramatic or life-threatening happening. I think there's much more consumer sentiment, both in the UK and globally, around people looking at wellness and well-being, and how do I maintain both my physical and mental health going forward. And I think we'll see a shift, not just from a health insurance perspective, but within our own plans, that we have, support for mental health, we have support for more holistic things, we have annual health checks. And one of the things we did via the pandemic was reach out to all our private client customers in London and say, look, you've kind of been hibernating for the last year. You may not want to venture out, but why don't we send someone to your house to do an annual health check for you? Which was a way, again, you're a valued customer to Bupa, you have something. Why shouldn't we be actually making it easy for you to have that experience from a well-being perspective? So I think consumer sentiment has changed so significantly. I think, as someone said before, that it all has to still be insight driven, because I still think we'll see sentiment change for the next few months. But what won't change is there's nothing wrong with reaching out to customers to see how they are, but not via more human means than looking at open rates on emails.
I like that you talked about, calling customers, and I think there's an element of like being personal as a brand supposed to be impersonal. Technology could be so impersonal, and setting up campaigns or setting up life cycle automations, something that can feel impersonal. And one of the things we just released is around live chat, so it just allows you to have direct one-to-one conversations with consumers through the application experience. And that is exactly there for that purpose of driving a rich personal experience.
I think one of the interesting things about this is, and just as we sort of come towards the last part of the session, I just wanted to get all your opinions on, we've been talking, about reacting to the pandemic and how customer behavior is going to change. I imagine we can't all suddenly go out and develop a massive raft of brand new products from scratch to respond to these changing consumer needs, but we can respond to how they feel they derive value from the relationship. In terms of the way the immediate future looks like for all of your propositions and your customer relationships, what does delivering that value around your product look like at the moment in the near term, whether that's blending channels, whether that's making more use of digital, making more use in terms of just simply reaching out and talking to them more?
I think about a balance of all of that. For me, we've definitely focused on our, digital strategy, but similarly, the traditional channels that, you wouldn't always have tended to focus on as much, we've reverted back a little bit too, based on, insights from our media agency and speaking to our customers. So for me, I really think the balance has to be there in all of them, the online, the offline, above the line, below the line, and we will continue to do that, but based on what the customers have said to us, really, more than just what we think is the best thing to do, and understanding what the customer value proposition is, which we've got a real focus on going forward, and our propositions team are really focused on.
I think as well, adding to that, it's around how the customer chooses to interact with you. So that continues to be really important, and having that interaction as simple as possible is really important. So depending on what channel a customer chooses to interact with you, making it as joined up as you can possibly for the customer continues to be really important. I think as well, the technology will continue to evolve, and customers will continue to adapt and use that technology as we move forward. But that doesn't mean that we won't have human support, where customers want it and need it. And I think it's more critical than ever but a lot of investment around emotion and AI, and we're seeing that coming out a lot more. So artificial intelligence and digital assistants resonating more with customers, a much more emotional interaction. That's still at the early stages, but we're seeing a lot of investment around that across the industry as well. You know, customers expect that more engaging experience, and to somewhat AI up to now has been a little bit sort of flat in terms of that engagement, and just continuing to develop that and invest in that will be hugely important, I think.
Mantas, do you want to have a thought about it?
I think consistency in storytelling.
Yeah.
To create trust and to create that stickiness. When all of the questions are answered prior they arise.
So in terms of, I mean, we were talking about things like AI, and AI, Angela was saying that it's not that brilliant when it comes to having that emotional engagement, but it is a great way of finding things out about what customers want. And increasingly in terms of sentiment analysis, I mean, if you want to find out how a customer feels about your brand, and they feel either terrifically excited and they leave a great review, or they leave terrifically disappointed and leave a rubbish review, but they don't really do anything in the middle bit. And the middle bit is where the business is quite happily chuntering along and doing what it was supposed to do. But AI can determine this. You know, how was their sentiment? Did they get through their job seamlessly? Was their tone of voice on the phone call very neutral and therefore satisfied? Do you think we're going to see a bit more of that happening, where we can assess the success of our interactions and then adapt them accordingly?
I think that in the market it is a great success that we are hearing a bit less about AI recently, because it was a real buzzword a year or two ago when everything was all about AI, and suddenly you realize that service which was bragging about AI analysis of your customer service conversations is just a simple analysis tool which extracts certain keywords or certain phrases and so on. And I think that it is more or less about the people who use that service, rather than, you know, very scientific titles and all that stuff. First of all, managers, and especially retention managers, they must know what they are searching for in the data. They must know what insights they want to gather in that data. And most of the time, you know, from my own experience, I can say that it is enough to ask for a data team to extract one CSV file and to do the math in Excel, rather than integrating very huge platforms which then aren't usable for entire company.
Fantastic. So going from one extreme of tech-driven AI being a buzzword to back to Neil with the high net worth individuals, where it is still a very personal relationship. How do you see that changing? When you mentioned, you know, talking to a high net worth individual who's not necessarily used to being contacted by his health insurer to say, how are you feeling? Would you like a checkup? And is perhaps maybe not monitoring their inbox. How do you see you building that relationship as we, fingers crossed, approach a bit more normality going forward?
Yeah, no, I think the relationship is very different. We've had some of our customers actually take out their relationship manager for lunch. So these are our customers taking our own employees out. So which I've never seen before, but it kind of shows the depth of relationship there as well. I think it's always interesting to look at that particular segment and say, well, actually, are they more demanding? Probably not. They're more inquisitive from an innovation perspective, and they've got a lot of ideas from themselves. So I think, you know, a lot of the things we've talked about is around optimizing. I think now beyond any time, there's an opportunity to, yes, optimizing is important, but now to explore more than we've ever done before, and using our customers as a way to get insight around some of the things they're interested in. And from a high net worth perspective, you know, doing market research in high net worth is really tough. Speaking to them with the depth of relationship we've had around what is important to them, is something I don't think we've done before, is using it as an insight tool. So how do we take that feedback from client managers and drive it forward? So helping, co-creation hasn't been talked about for years, but it is kind of co-creation with that particular segment. But, and again, not, well, would you like to do this slightly differently? So, well, what are the big things that you'd like to do? What are the bits that we can really explore? And now more than ever, I think it's the perfect time to do that.
Fantastic. We're coming right up to the end of our session, so I just wanted to round it off and perhaps ask Steve if there are any sort of insights, going forward. It's been a period of great change. We've either interacted much more with brands and service providers than we ever have before on a much more intensive level, or we could even have ignored them altogether if you're thinking about things like travel, entertainment, and the pub, things like that. But how do you think brands are going to be able to deliver and maintain those relationships going forward?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's been, a lot of change, a lot of adjusting, and I think Holly, you talked about, having to do new things and getting things done more quickly. One of the things we did, we studied year on year the change in open rates based off notifications, and direct open rates increased 29% year on year across notifications. And I think there's an element, of course, people are using mobiles more and more. Will they continue? We expect they would. And I think you as brands are also thinking, right, well, of what we've done in the last year, what will we continue? What will continue to work? And I think there's this idea of retention. When I look at like some of our customers, like airline customers, cinema, trains, they've had to adjust, right? They adjust to do more information, education, entertaining the consumers. And it's like how much of that you carry on and take forward into the future, because you want to ride that wave of growth that is coming. So it's not all been doom and gloom. There's opportunity ahead that we're all looking to capitalize on.
That's a fantastic note to end on. Do click through to the other 2 videos in this series, where we'll be talking about managing the multi-channel ecosystem and building seamless digital experiences. I'd like to thank our panelists for being so free with their views and experience. But most of all, I'd like to thank you for watching. I hope you found it useful.